Right now, the world is holding its breath. Oil markets are shaking. World leaders are scrambling behind closed doors. Warships are moving through one of the most dangerous regions on Earth. And one question is echoing across every government, every newsroom, and every financial market. What will Iran do next? Because this is no longer just about one country. This is about global power, global fear, global consequences. One decision, one retaliation, one blocked shipping route could send fuel prices exploding, economies crashing, and entire regions into chaos. Nearly every superpower now has something at stake. America is watching, Israel is preparing, China is calculating, Russia is waiting. And the Middle East stands on the edge of another historic turning point. But here's what makes this moment truly terrifying. Nobody knows whether Iran's next move will be political, economic, or military. And history has shown us something dangerous. The moments that change the world forever often begin with silence, uncertainty, and one unexpected move nobody saw coming. Tonight, we break down why the world is panicking, what Iran could do next, and why the outcome may reshape global power for years to come. The most dangerous places in the world are not always the ones filled with bombs and soldiers. Sometimes they are the narrow spaces where fear, pride, and power collide. And right now, one narrow stretch of water holds the pressure of the entire world. Because when men believe they are cornered, they stop thinking about peace and start thinking about control. Nations behave the same way. Iran knows the world is watching its every move. And that kind of pressure creates a dangerous psychology, the need to prove strength even at great cost. What makes this terrifying is not just weapons or warships. It is human nature. Men are taught that backing down looks weak. Leaders know this. Governments know this. Entire populations are emotionally driven by the idea of dominance and respect. And when a nation feels humiliated or threatened, the response is rarely calm logic. It becomes emotional, strategic, sometimes reckless. Women often see conflict differently, not as a game of pride, but as a chain reaction that destroys families, futures, and stability. While many men focus on power and retaliation, women often sense the human cost long before the first strike happens. The world is panicking because this is no longer just politics. It is psychology under pressure. One move in this choke point could trigger fear across oil markets, military alliances, and millions of households already struggling to survive uncertainty. The world economy is more fragile than most people realize. It looks powerful on the surface. Massive banks, global trade, billion-dollar markets. But beneath it all is something deeply human. Confidence, and confidence can collapse overnight. One missile launched in the wrong direction could send oil prices surging, stock markets crashing, and fear spreading faster than facts. Because markets do not react like machines. They react like people, emotional, uncertain, defensive. What makes moments like this so dangerous is the psychology of men in power. Men are often conditioned to believe that strength must be demonstrated immediately, especially when challenged publicly. Nations operate with the same instinct. Retaliation becomes a message. Silence becomes weakness. And when leaders feel pressure from enemies, media, or their own people, decisions become less about wisdom and more about image. That is when fear enters the system. Not fear of one missile, fear of what comes after it. Families feel this long before governments admit it. Women often notice instability through emotion, routine, and security. They think about rising food prices, uncertainty, children, survival. Men tend to focus on strategy, retaliation, dominance. but the economy responds to both. Fear in the battlefield becomes fear in the household, and fear inside households spreads across entire nations within hours. The most powerful nations in the world rarely panic in public. They prepare in silence. Behind closed doors, military strategies are being updated, alliances are being tested, and leaders are calculating every possible scenario. Because history has taught superpowers one brutal lesson: the greatest threats are often the ones ignored too long. And when uncertainty grows around a nation like Iran, preparation becomes survival. Not because war is guaranteed, but because fear of losing control is stronger than the hope that everything will calm down. What drives escalation is often not hatred, but ego under pressure. Men in positions of power are trained to project certainty, even when uncertainty is everywhere around them. A leader who hesitates risks looking weak. A nation that delays response risks losing influence. And when pride mixes with fear, rational thinking becomes dangerous territory. This is not just military strategy. This is male psychology operating on a global scale. The need to dominate, the fear of humiliation, the instinct to respond before vulnerability is exposed. Ordinary people feel this tension differently. Women often sense escalation emotionally before it becomes visible politically. They notice the anxiety in conversations, the instability in homes, the emotional exhaustion that comes from constant uncertainty. While governments prepare weapons and responses, millions of families quietly prepare themselves for rising fear, economic pressure, and the possibility that the world they trusted may suddenly become unpredictable. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in moments of global tension, silence can become one of the most powerful psychological weapons in the world. Right now, Iran's silence is making governments nervous because uncertainty creates fear faster than aggression ever could. When people cannot predict the next move, their imagination begins filling the gaps with worst-case scenarios. And fear of the unknown has always controlled human behavior more effectively than visible threats. What makes this strategy effective is the psychology behind power. Men are conditioned to react when challenged. They want answers. They want clarity. They want to know where they stand. But silence removes control from the other side. It forces opponents into anxiety, speculation, and emotional pressure. Nations experience the same instinct. Superpowers begin moving military assets, preparing responses, and creating contingency plans, not because something has happened, but because something might happen. Silence creates tension because it denies emotional closure. Women often understand this emotional dynamic differently. They recognize that silence can carry hidden emotion, hidden anger, hidden intention. In relationships, silence can make people overthink. In global politics, it does the same thing. Families begin worrying. Markets become unstable. Leaders feel pressure to act before uncertainty spreads further. And the longer the silence continues, the more dangerous human imagination becomes, especially when pride, fear, and power are all trapped in the same room. Fear moves through the world faster than any missile ever could. Before the first explosion happens, before armies move, before governments even make official statements, fear has already entered people's minds. It spreads through headlines, conversations, social media, and silence. And once fear enters the human mind, people stop thinking clearly. They begin reacting emotionally. That is what makes moments like this so dangerous. The panic surrounding Iran's next move is not only about war itself, it is about uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the greatest psychological triggers humans experiences. What makes fear powerful is that men and women often respond to it differently. Men are conditioned to hide fear behind action. When pressure rises, many men focus on control, strategy, retaliation, dominance. They want to feel prepared, strong, useful. Even nations behave this way. Governments increase military presence not only to defend themselves, but to project confidence to the world. Because in masculine psychology, appearing weak can feel more dangerous than making the wrong move. Fear, when mixed with pride, often creates escalation instead of restraint. Women tend to experience fear through emotional safety and long-term stability. They think about the consequences that ripple into homes, relationships, children, and everyday survival. While men may prepare for conflict externally, women often sense the emotional collapse internally, long before it becomes visible. They notice tension in voices, anxiety in routines, uncertainty in the future. And when millions of households begin carrying that same invisible anxiety at once, fear becomes larger than governments, larger than armies, larger than the conflict itself. The most dangerous moments in history are often the ones that feel uncertain, quiet, and unfinished. Right now, the world is entering a window where a single decision could shift global politics, financial markets, and military alliances overnight. The next 72 hours matter because pressure is building on every side. Leaders are being watched. Armies are waiting. Citizens are anxious. And when tension reaches this level, people stop reacting with patience and start reacting with instinct. That is when history changes. What makes this moment psychologically intense is the pressure placed on men in positions of authority. Men are often taught that hesitation looks weak, especially when the entire world is demanding answers. Nations operate under the same emotional code. A delayed response can be interpreted as vulnerability. A strong response can become a warning to enemies. And in high-pressure situations, pride can become louder than wisdom. The fear of losing respect sometimes drives decisions faster than the desire to protect peace. Women often experience these moments through emotional awareness rather than political strategy. They notice the tension building before headlines fully explain it. They think about safety, stability, and the emotional cost of uncertainty inside families and communities. While governments calculate military outcomes, millions of ordinary people quietly calculate how quickly life could change if one wrong move turns global fear into global crisis.